What's going on, everyone? Yeah, it's been a while. I moved into my new place, as you see, but internet issues happened. They didn't get the line installer out here, so I'm using something temporary in the meantime and a lot of other stuff going on. But to get to this is definitely what I want to start on, and also Half-Life 3. I got to talk about that and what that means in a separate video, though, because that's going to be very important. So here on PlayStation Universe, and I think that was the rumor started on Reddit, I'll get to that in a second, says that Sony is reportedly pulling back from PC for major single-player games, live service games to remain day and date. Yeah, I don't see why they would do that. Now, this is not something I would say that could be clarified, but if it would make sense, it would make sense from a single-player standpoint if they were bringing the PlayStation app to PC and they wanted that in their ecosystem so that you could support that specifically, kind of like an Xbox app. You only be able to play Game Pass on there, and you can't go on Steam and do that. I don't see why Sony wouldn't do their own position from that. I even heard Paris say something that he's heard something about that too, not just Jez saying that. And I think the reason why probably he came out and said what he said, which we'll take a look at in a second, is because he does not want to be the source for PlayStation news. Now, I'm not clarifying this, but I'm saying if anything makes sense when you think about Game Pass, you're not playing Game Pass on somebody else's database, like, you know what I mean, on ProtonDB, on Steam. You can't do it on Steam Deck. So if Sony was going to try to push the same route as Microsoft, then they're going to do the same thing with the PlayStation app. That's what I think to start this off. Hopefully you guys have been good. Yo, man, it's been a roller coaster over here. But let's get into this. So, the funny thing is about this is there's a thread right over here, a post over here, which I kind of find funny. Over here on this area right here is where it started, right? PlayStation pulling games off Steam so they can't be played on Steam Machine. That is actually funny. I think there's some more to it than that. And it says, anyone here get the feeling that PlayStation and Sony may pull certain games from Steam because they don't want those games on Steam Machine, as they could impact console sales, especially with PlayStation 6 on the horizon. Well, I think Valve putting out a hardware without any exclusive is not going to change the function of the way Steam works, and that affecting PlayStation. No. Because you're not looking at a Steam Machine as something that's going to sell like 100 million, you know what I mean? Now, I'm not going to get deep into that because we got to get to a separate video on how I think things could change depending on this Half-Life 3 information that I have to do separately. But one thing I can say is that's kind of like a stupid idea. And if that's where this started, then there's no way to believe this. But a lot of people were saying that there's a Reddit post about some things too, so I pulled that up. We're going to take a look at all of this and see how this goes. This guy says, no, there'll still be timed exclusives. That's a possibility. Or like I said, Sony's just going to make sure everything is within their ecosystem. We'll see, though. Here is an article saying that PlayStation games sells on Steam as per leaked documents, so that we can realize if Sony wanted to kind of look at this and see how things started off. Now, remember in God of War 2018, that sold 2.5 million. They were happy with that, you know what I mean? Before negative PlayStation aspects started happening. And then you had Horizon Zero Dawn, which hit 3.3 million. It's like, okay, you guys, yeah, keep it going. What's wrong with that? You know what I mean? I'm not a hater. I think if you're expanding out, what's wrong with that? Everybody's winning in that sense. And you can get more funds to make more IPs. Now, I don't have my background music, by the way, because I have to hook up other things, and I just can't do that at the moment. Days Gone, 1.7 million. So I think Sony at this point was like, okay, Spider-Man Remastered, 1.3 million, though they probably wanted better that for a Spider-Man game. They're like, okay, not too bad. But as Uncharted Lost Legacy came out, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Sackboy, and then you started to see God of War, Ragnarok, and all those other games. So I wish I would have put that up there. They weren't doing as well as they probably wanted. People were pirating. They didn't like some of the other political stuff. You know how people get into that. And this is not like something that's up to date, but this was an idea about things that were kind of like doing well back in late 2023, pretty much you could say the beginning of 2024 almost. So almost 2 years have passed. Obviously, those have sold more. Now, does Sony want to pull that back? I have no idea. But if they do, it's only because they're going to be putting the PlayStation app on PC. I'm telling you, that's what I think. Other than that, why are you passing up free money? It doesn't make any sense. Do I believe Sony's going to do day and date on PC? No, I believe what they're probably going to have to do now is try to, like I say, do that with their app. They're not going to do it on Steam. And that's if they do that, right? Because there's a lot going on here. And then we got the article with Jez where this was kind of set. So that's why we had to look at all of this. It says, Xbox Insider says PlayStation is probably pulling back from PC days after saying day and date exclusives are coming. Earlier this week, Valve announced the Steam Machine. A new mini PC that repackages Lynch gaming into a console. We know that, right? With access to an enormous catalog of games out of the box. After all, the Steam machine can play Xbox and PlayStation games without restriction, tearing down the traditional console walls and free online, obviously. But you still have to wait, obviously. It does seem like, this is what he said right here, it does seem like the games that PlayStation released on PC didn't move the needle for them at all. Like after a while, like lately, yes. At first it was actually good, but I believe the way Sony was acting a certain way. After that, PC players started pirating their games. It wasn't selling nowhere as near. The numbers were not looking good. So maybe Sony was like, you know what? If this is not doing much for us and we want to strengthen the PlayStation ecosystem, because a lot of things have changed then, meaning that now you want to have the Portal the way that it is in their own ecosystem. You got the PlayStation 5 in its own ecosystem, and then you maybe have the app, kind of like how Steam is trying to do the same thing. Microsoft is doing their own thing with that in a way. Then you see them all independently trying to do this. You know what I mean? Or Steam has their own ecosystem with their Steam machine, with their Steam Deck, and being on PC dominating there, and that's their own ecosystem. PlayStation is doing that. Nintendo's been doing that. Now PlayStation wants to do that way, as we see that, because the Switch has opened up the door for everybody to do that. And then you see Xbox trying to do it in their way too. So I am not going to deny that, because I think that's a move that all of them are going to make regardless, in that sort of sense, where it's all about the PlayStation worlds. In that way, off the screen, on the screen, and in the living room. And it's all about Steam and people who don't want to leave those profiles where you have those worlds like that in 3 different dimensions. You know what I mean? The Xbox world like that, and obviously Nintendo, who's been doing that. Like, I got you off the screen too, and you're still looking at my market, because it's about time competition in that sense. So I think that that's very possible. Now, that if it was all based off of a Reddit thread and nobody had anything like that thought up in the world, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I can shoot this down, no problem, because I don't see anybody doing that. But when you see kind of like that being the medium here, it's like, yeah, that's very believable. You know what I mean? I can't really say that that's a lie. So PlayStation probably, he said, is pulling back from PC, Corden claimed. A very good source told him the cross-buy buttons on a PlayStation PC, as we see, I don't know if you guys remember that, where they had the cross-buy with the little lightning symbol and all that, and people were saying, oh no, things are coming dead to PC on Steam, but no, that's within the PlayStation ecosystem. And then it had that battery thing, which kind of aligns with either the Portal or the future handheld. You know what I mean? So we got the iconography here. It's from outdated old builds, and it's never going to be used. So they're saying that's old stuff. I remember Portal Rock making a post about that too, and other people coming in to clarify that. That was some old stuff about some profile pictures and all that, and maybe we might have read into that a little bit. I didn't need. I was just talking about, that I didn't know if that was going to be true or not. But I do know eventually that something like that obviously is going to happen. But people were saying that that was not something to really, take serious, take it with a grain of salt. It says, it does seem like games that PlayStation released on PC didn't move the needle for them at all. Partially because they were launched so late. But maybe they used that as evidence that they shouldn't go any further. Now, I don't think this is accidentally talked about, because why would Jess accidentally bring something up like that? I think he does have something maybe a little bit to the side, and then maybe somebody told him something. You never know. And then, like I said, I saw Paris come out and say something about it. And then you see other things going on around it as well. Reddit said what they said, but they kind of said it in a way where it's like, this kind of just seems like some guy coming on asking an opinion. But then he states, like, let's really think about it, PlayStation pulling games off Steam so they can't be played on Steam machine. Like, why did you say that headline? And then he says, anyone here get the feeling that PlayStation and Sony, because that is totally different context. Like, it's like, does anybody get the feeling like you just want to ask a question out of nowhere, right? It's like, oh, does anyone get the feeling? Like, that's not no source. You're just saying, I don't know, hey guys, what do you think about this one day? Like, it's kind of like that, right? But this headline is a statement like, PlayStation pulling games off Steam so they can't be played on Steam machine. Where'd you get that from? You know what I mean? Like, that's a whole different statement compared to like some little just random pop-up question that you would just have hanging out with somebody, right? Because they don't want these games on the Steam machine, as they can impact console sales, especially with PS6 on the horizon. Dude, I don't see why more games would sell on a Steam machine, because people are just going to carry over the games that they already wanted on Steam just to play there. Or you would think because they have a console-like experience that's going to spike up the PlayStation games? I don't think so, man. I think they're going to sell the way they want to sell. And a lot of PC players want to pirate things too, and they had issues with Sony anyway. So, I don't know, man. Like, if you only went off of this, and like I said, those other worlds didn't exist, I can understand that. But I think, like I said, they're all going to have their own ecosystems like that way. And Sony's going to put that app right there. So that's my take on this, guys. If you have any other questions about this, if you want to add in some things, please add that down in the comments. Going down here in some of these comments, you says, if you're a PlayStation fan, you should want this. Here's my thing. I've always told you guys, identity is important. So I think if Sony can make their identity stronger, but by putting it day and date on PC through an app, and you can own it on there and then own it on the PS5 and PS6 and on the handheld, why is that a bad thing? Because on PC, you're still getting it day and date now, rather than having to wait a year or two on PC. Why would you not just want to get it immediately and just use the PlayStation app? Because I would say if you had a problem with that, that'd be hypocritical, because at least you're not using the freaking game bar and Microsoft's annoying a Windows aspect. Sony's probably going to have their own Linux aspect to that. Like Valve has their own Proton DB with Steam. So I'm not against it. Either way, you'll be able to play on higher settings. But I think at the point that we're getting in this world, the diminishing returns for rasterization is so like high now that who cares, man? I just want wherever I can get it at day one now. Because with the Pro, I mean, it's like, dude, everything looks good now. It's about, can you get that 60 frames and all that extra stuff? Most people don't give a damn about. That's only for like hardcore enthusiasts. So that's kind of what I wanted to add in. You see stuff like, yeah, I made it up. But here's my thing, though, because Jazz also came out and said something. Let's finish it with this. Yes, you can say that possibly, but like I said, it makes sense, though. When you see what Valve is doing, what Microsoft is doing, and how Sony would usually follow suit on some of those things. Yeah, they usually do. He came out and said this after. Just want to add that these were very vague rumors and just podcast discussions and speculations, not a serious report or leak. It's my personal opinion that it would be good for Sony to do day and date speak and peer mathematically. But a few people saw me say that and told me what they heard otherwise. So like I said, there were some sources outside of that. And then it says, I don't do PlayStation reporting and shouldn't be used as a source of info for it beyond basic opinions. But he had to add that in because it's not something that just welled up in his being. It was something that, like he said, he heard and he had to talk about. So somebody has some type of information on something here to a degree. Obviously, I'm not going to 100% verify it, but as I already explained in this video, it makes 100% sense. So he says, I don't do PlayStation reporting and shouldn't be used as a source of info for it beyond basic opinions. Speculation unless it's up on when C, Xbox, Microsoft is my beat. Yeah, as we know that. You guys know I usually like doing some reports on Jazz. I like Jazz. I think he's a cool guy. Obviously, I know he likes Xbox a lot, and that's pretty much all he talks about. But other than that, he's a cool guy. And this guy's coming in harassing people, but it's like, yeah, but dude, like I said, if you think outside the box and look at the full picture, it gives you an idea that this is a very plausible statement and it makes sense. I don't care if you're pulling games off Steam if you're going day and date on PC. I think a lot of people are not going to care. So let me know what you guys think about this, all right? Like, comment, subscribe. I know you guys are glad to see me back. Like I said, man, this guy, man, with the line installer, they ordered my internet. They were supposed to send a guy out here. He's like, man, bad news, man. They didn't tell me that they didn't have a line install waiting. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So he's like, you got to wait up to 2 weeks. So I don't think it'll take that. So I got a temporary box from T-Mobile at the moment. And I'm using this for now. Whatever, man. And then we got some malware stuff going on here too, but we'll get that all situated too. I got off 2 viruses, but there's something else going on too that I got to get off. But other than that, yeah, I had to move and things are a lot better. Yeah, I know you guys like that background. I didn't have a background filter, but let me know what you guys think. Later, y'all. Peace out. You thought I was going somewhere? No, AGN is back. Later.